Let's just dive right into this explainer. The Survivor's Chronicle, 2,000 Years of Paris. Now, when we think of Paris, we're usually picturing, grand boulevards, elegant cafes, romance, all that good stuff. But today, we're looking at a completely different side of the city. We're tracing an incredibly tense 2,000-year survival story of a place that was constantly facing total annihilation. The real history here is one of fire, fury, and just immense danger. From ancient tribes to modern uprisings, this is a city that has been conquered, burned, occupied, and even torn apart by its own people. And yet, somehow, it always survives. To really wrap our heads around the massive stakes of the story, just think about this shocking number, 6 million. That is how many skeletons lie stacked in the catacombs right beneath the streets of Paris. Back in the 1780s, the city's cemeteries were literally overflowing, to the point where they were making the living sick. So, millions of remains had to be relocated into these deep underground quarry tunnels. Today, they're sitting there as this grim, highly physical reminder of the existential threats, the plagues, the famines, and just the sheer volume of death this city has barely squeaked by over the centuries. Which brings us to our first chapter, Mud, Marshes, and Miracles. Let's look at the ancient origins. See, long before the grand architecture we know today, Paris was really just a marshy settlement. Way back around 259 BC, a Celtic tribe called the Parisii settled on this tiny island in the Seine, just trying to survive the ancient world. Then Julius Caesar and his Roman legions show up, burn it to the ground, and build a town they called Lutetia. But once the Romans eventually left, a ticking clock of constant invasions and catastrophes really kicked off. I mean, it is a relentless wave of near-death experiences. You've got Attila the Hun in 451 AD, ruthless Viking sieges blockading the city for literally months in the 9th century, and the catastrophic arrival of the plague. It's just wave after wave of potential annihilation. Let's zoom in on 451 AD for a second. The barbarian tribes are completely carving up Europe, and Attila the Hun, yes, that Attila, is marching his terrifying army directly toward the city walls. Naturally, absolute panic sets in. The residents are frantic, packing up, getting ready to just abandon their homes entirely. But then, this young woman named Genevieve steps forward. She actually manages to convince the terrified population to stay and pray instead of running from the Huns. And whether you want to call it a miracle or just a sudden shift in military strategy, Attila's forces change course at the very last moment. The city is spared, Genevieve becomes the patron saint of Paris, and she essentially hands the city its most crucial weapon for survival: hope. Moving right along to the next era, sieges, plagues, and saints, the Middle Ages. So by the 14th century, Paris had really established itself as a massive, undeniable power. We're talking architectural marvels like the Notre Dame Cathedral being built, this stunning statement that almost seemed to defy gravity. But here's the catch. All this rising wealth and prominence basically painted a giant target on the city's back. Because it was such a major crossroads of commerce, it became a magnet for catastrophic tragedy. Case in point, 1348. The Black Death arrives, and it is devastating. It wipes out up to half of the city's entire population, 50%. The bodies were piling up so fast they couldn't even be buried. The literal smell of death hung in the air over Paris for years, and trade just completely collapsed. Imagine living there at the time. You're quite literally watching your world come to an end. And the trauma doesn't stop there. It rolls straight into the 100 Years' War. In 1420, Paris falls to the English and their allies, plunging the city into a brutal 16-year foreign occupation. The darkness of this whole era is only broken by some really sudden, shocking momentum brought on by, of all people, Joan of Arc. Think about it. A 17-year-old illiterate peasant girl claiming she hears the voices of saints actually manages to electrify the French army. It's wild. Now, she is tragically captured and burned at the stake at just 19 years old, but her impact totally shifts the tide of history. Because of that spark, Paris is finally liberated in 1436. That brings us to a particularly dark chapter, an age of blood, revolutions, and massacres. See, even as Paris recovers and steps into the elegant Renaissance, this incredible time of humanism, art, Leonardo da Vinci, that beautiful enlightenment super quickly gives way to unimaginable bloody slaughter. The city's history is basically a constant pendulum swing between breathtaking culture and visceral, terrifying violence. In 1572, these deep religious tensions between Catholics and Protestant Huguenots just absolutely explode in the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre.
What starts as targeted assassinations completely spirals into madness. Catholic mobs are hunting Protestants in the streets, literally turning the Seine River into a graveyard of floating bodies. The violence spreads outward, eventually resulting in an estimated 70,000 deaths nationwide. It's easily one of the darkest chapters in the city's existence.
Fast forward to the late 18th century, and that pendulum swings right back again. The starving masses who have been completely crushed by taxes, while the aristocracy lives in total luxury, finally say enough and revolt. The storming of the Bastille ignites the French Revolution, which ushers in the infamous Reign of Terror. And man, the revolution really devours its own children here. King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette are executed, and they're followed by tens of thousands of nobles, priests, and even fellow revolutionaries. The streets of Paris were quite literally running with blood as the guillotine fell day after day.
Let's move into the next era: empires and barricades, the 19th century.
So after the utter exhaustion of the revolution and the rise and fall of Napoleon's global empire, Paris is still a city at war with itself, completely defined by street barricades and uprisings. To put a stop to this, the emperors stepped in to design a city that simply could not fight back. Now, we all admire those beautiful, wide Parisian boulevards today, right? But they actually had a super sinister dual purpose under Emperor Napoleon III and Baron Haussmann. Yes, sure, they brought much-needed modernization. Sewers, parks, streetlights, all that. But by bulldozing the narrow, winding medieval streets and replacing them with wide, straight boulevards, the government made it virtually impossible for citizens to build barricades. And at the same time, it made it incredibly easy for military troops to march right through and crush any rebellions. Pretty wild design trick, right? But of course, the peace doesn't last. In 1870, this newly beautified city is thrown right back to the brink. During the disastrous Franco-Prussian War, Prussian forces completely surround Paris. For 4 agonizing months, widespread starvation sets in. The desperate citizens are pushed so far that they're forced onto a horrifying survival diet. We are talking eating rats, eating cats, and finally, when those ran out, they literally butchered the exotic animals in the city zoo just to survive the siege. And following that deeply humiliating siege, the citizens refuse to just accept defeat quietly. They rise up and form a radical government called the Paris Commune. But the French government violently crushes them in what goes down in history as the Bloody Week. Up to 20,000 disorganized revolutionaries, known as communards, are slaughtered by their own government in just a single week. Mass executions everywhere. Paris is left entirely traumatized, burning, and covered in ashes yet again.
Which leads us to our next chapter: Beauty Under Threat, the Belle Epoque and War.
Incredibly, from all those ashes rises the Belle Epoque, an absolute golden era of art and light. This is the time of the Moulin Rouge, the Impressionist painters. Paris basically becomes the undisputed cultural capital of the world. To really show off its modern ambition, the city builds the Eiffel Tower in 1889. Now, surprisingly, the initial reaction from Parisians was deep, deep hatred. They were calling it an eyesore and a metal monstrosity. But this soaring structure would very quickly become the ultimate symbol of Paris, standing silent watch over a continent that was about to plunge straight into the total darkness of the First and Second World Wars. As we hit 1940, the French military completely collapses in a matter of weeks against the German invasion. So you have to ask yourself, after 2,000 years of surviving plagues, Vikings, and violent revolutions, is this the moment the ultimate survivor finally falls permanently to the Nazis? Would the City of Light finally go dark? Well, here's what happens. In May 1940, Germany invades. But to avoid total physical destruction, Paris is officially declared an open city, which basically means it surrenders without a fight. For 4 terrifying years, the swastika flies right over the Eiffel Tower, and horrific atrocities occur as Jewish Parisians are rounded up. But beneath the surface, resistance is brewing. Finally, in August 1944, as Allied forces approach, Parisians throw up those barricades one last time, fighting the occupiers street by street. They even defy a direct, spiteful order from Hitler to burn the city to the ground. Against all odds, Paris is liberated. Bringing us to our final section, the unbreakable city, modern Paris. After surviving the unimaginable horrors of World War II, a deeply traumatized but completely unbroken Paris sets about rebuilding its spirit. It transforms into this center for modern philosophy, fashion, and sprawling urban growth. But as a city carrying the immense weight of all this history, the trials are definitely far from over. I mean, look at the 21st century alone. You've got intense suburban riots in 2005 over inequality, devastating, tragic terror attacks in 2015 that actively sought to break the city's spirit, and of course the heartbreaking moment in 2019 when the entire world watched the spire of the iconic Notre Dame Cathedral collapse in flames. But through every single modern tragedy, the city grieves, yet it absolutely refuses to be broken. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with a thought. Paris isn't perfect, right? Its history is deeply scarred by oppression and profound darkness. But it is also a city that gave the entire world revolutionary ideas about freedom and human dignity. Knowing all the fire, the plague, and the blood that Paris has endured, how do you think its fierce, stubborn, and passionate residents will shape the next chapter of history? What comes next for a city that has survived the end of the world a dozen times over? Thanks for joining me on this one, and keep exploring the past to understand our future.